Bia Beltran was having a pretty normal day. She was in the passenger seat of an inconspicuous car in an inconspicuous neighborhood, and her brother was making sure they drew no attention. Suddenly, she looked out her window and saw a slightly bigger car than hers barreling towards her vehicle. In a split second, the car hit her vehicle, disorienting both her and her brother. Two gunmen descended from the car and started shooting at Bia. Bia immediately lay on the vehicle's floor. As she stared at the sky through the vehicle's sunroof, she waited for death to take her. One of the bullets had hit her brother, and he was already wasting away close to her. Suddenly, she decided that she wouldn't wait for her death and would try to escape. She didn't know whether she would live or die, but she took the risk anyway. In 5 seconds, she unlocked the door and was running away from the car while ducking a hail of bullets. By some miracle, she made it to the sidewalk, entered an apartment building, and hid behind a bush without getting hit. The gunmen followed her and searched for her with no luck. The criminals tried all they could to find her, but they didn't. Time was running out for them as they soon heard police sirens. This was their cue to flee the scene. Any normal woman running from assassins would have been delighted by hearing police sirens. But Avila wasn't a normal woman. She was a drug lord worth billions of dollars. She was the famous Queen of the Pacific, and she had an entire fleet of tuna boats that delivered cocaine to America, and she just escaped certain death. The only stories we hear from Mexican cartels are stories led by men. We know male drug kingpins, assassins, and cartel bosses. What we don't know is that the women of the cartel also play a huge part in the ever-expanding scope of that criminal empire. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the remarkable stories of some of the most interesting women to have ever been in Mexican cartels. We'll be learning who the women of the cartel are, what they did, and what they are doing now. We will be starting with Bia Beltran. Bia was born into the world of narcos and drug lords. Her father was a relative of the founder of the Guadalajara cartel. However, Avila wasn't interested in being a member of the cartel. She wanted to be a journalist, so she went to journalism school. Unfortunately, she got kidnapped by a jealous boyfriend just 3 years into her studies. Her boyfriend was also a member of a cartel, and she was scared of what he could do to her. So she did the reasonable thing. She left home and got into the cartel underground. The fact that she was good with guns, could drive well, and could ride horses as well meant that Bia rose quickly amongst the ranks of the cartel underground. However, Bia never did one thing. She never used drugs herself. Her rationale was that the men of the cartel didn't respect women who used drugs. So despite selling hundreds of tons of cocaine every month, Bia made sure she never sniffed it. The most remarkable thing about Bia was her ambition. She didn't just want to be a member of a cartel. She wanted to be the queen of the white powder trade. Over the course of her career, she became friendly with drug kingpins like El Chapo, dated a top leader in the Sinaloa cartel, won shooting competitions with the head bodyguard of Rafael Caro Quintero, founder of the Guadalajara cartel, and commanded a 30-car flotilla. She also accumulated a ton of wealth in the process. For her son's 15th birthday, she gave him about $40,000 cash and a brand new Hummer Jeep. Like all cartel leaders, Bia also had her run-in with the law. In 2002, her son was kidnapped, and she paid a ransom of $5 million for his release. That move alerted the police, who began investigating the source of her wealth. In time, Bia had to go on the run and live as a fugitive while controlling her empire. It was during her stint on the run that she was attacked by gunmen who murdered her brother. After the men who attacked her fled in fear of the police, Bia found a witness who gave her clean clothes and some money to escape the area. Unfortunately for her, her luck didn't hold for too long. She eventually got caught by the police in 2007 and spent almost 10 years in jail. She got out of prison in 2015 and has been slowly recovering her stature and her composure. But now, Bia doesn't want to continue in the drug trade. Instead, she's focused on spending time with her son and recovering all of her buried wealth. Right now, she has an army of lawyers fighting the courts to recoup approximately 15 homes, 30 sports cars, and an estimated 300 jewels. These were all properties seized before she went to jail. Avila Beltran's exploits in the world of crime are so unprecedented that there's yet to be anyone to pick up her crown. While there are still many women in the narcos business, there's no one with as much power and wealth as Avila had during her peak. Many of the popular women involved in cartel business today end up either getting caught or ratting out the cartel. Some even do both. A good example of one such case is Emma Coronel, who we can call Mrs. El Chapo. Emma got married to El Chapo when he was 50 and she was around 17. Since then, she's been at his right hand, bearing his children, raising them, and even attending his court cases. While Emma herself has shown no ambition or willingness to either usurp El Chapo or run her cartel, she's shown a peculiar dedication to her husband. When Emma gave birth to the couple's twins in 2011, she made sure El Chapo's name stayed off the birth certificates of the children. The reason was simple. El Chapo had a $5 million bounty on his head at the time, and she didn't want anyone having funny thoughts. When El Chapo was arrested by the Mexican police, Emma continued to help him communicate with the cartel. She was also instrumental in helping him break out of prison for the first time. When he was arrested again and tried in America, she went with him to court every day and stayed by his side till he was sentenced to life in prison. In 2021, law enforcement officials eventually came for Emma herself. She was arrested on charges of helping El Chapo escape prison back in 2015. Other charges included money laundering and financial crimes. These charges proved too much for Emma, and she eventually buckled under the pressure from the FBI by agreeing to a plea deal. That deal would most likely involve Emma divulging information about the Sinaloa cartel to the police. She was promptly sentenced to 3 years in prison for her efforts. There's every expectation that when she gets out of prison, she would be put into a witness protection program by the authorities to keep her safe. Another woman who most likely gave up information to the police about her cartel's business is the daughter of El Mencho. El Mencho is the leader of the Jalisco New Generation cartel, and he's one of the most brutal bosses in the cartel business. El Mencho's daughter, Jessica Osiguera, used to be involved in her father's business. She helped her father launder money through businesses like sushi restaurants, a tequila business, and even a resort. Unfortunately for Jessica, she was eventually arrested by the police when she drove over the southern U.S. border in 2021. She got an extremely lenient sentence of just 2.5 years in prison. According to legal analysts, this lenient sentence most likely meant she agreed to a plea deal and gave up some information about the Jalisco New Generation cartel to the police. However, some of the cartel's women simply just retire from a life of crime and violence after years of fighting. One example is Clara Elena, also known as La Señora. Clara was the wife of Hector Beltran Leyva, El Chapo's former partner in the Sinaloa cartel. She was known as El Señora because of how well her husband treated her. However, in time, El Señora started to get involved in the cartel's business and began pulling her weight. In 2008, her husband split from the Sinaloa cartel and waged a bloody war against El Chapo and his men. This was her first baptism into the narcos world. She soon became the director of the money laundering component of the cartel. 4 years later, when her husband was arrested, she assumed full control of the cartel and waged a bloody war against the Sinaloa cartel. The war was so bloody that sometimes bodies of slain cartel members littered the street. Interestingly, years later, Clara has now totally abandoned the narcos world. Women like Avila, Clara, Emma, and Jessica show that the narcos world can also be playgrounds for powerful women. These women took control of their cartels, and while some of them buckled under pressure, others waged the cartel's war to the very end.